When a bus driver demands a black woman move to the back, she stands her ground. What happens next? The entire bus unites, challenging his racism in an unexpected uprising. The morning rush was in full swing when Evelyn Carter stepped onto the city bus, unknowingly on the brink of a confrontation that would challenge not just her, but the ideals of an entire community. As she made her way down the aisle, her steps measured and sure, her presence seemed to draw the air tight around her, charged with an unspoken tension. Evelyn, a 70-year-old black woman with a history of civil rights activism, carried herself with an aura of quiet dignity. Her attire was simple yet elegant, reflecting her serious demeanor and the strength of her character. Her silver hair was styled neatly, each strand seemingly in place, as she nodded politely to the bus driver, a gesture of respect that was not returned. The driver, Robert Whitman, was a veteran of the city transit system, his face etched with lines of discontent that seemed to deepen as he met Evelyn's gaze. His life's frustrations had turned his worldview sour, making him quick to judge and slow to understand. As Evelyn found her seat near the front, Robert's eyes followed her every move, his displeasure barely concealed. This ordinary morning ride was set against the backdrop of a bustling city, with the bus doors hissing shut against the hum of urban life. Inside, the bus was a microcosm of the city itself, a mix of people from all walks of life, each absorbed in their routines, yet all subconsciously aware of the brewing storm between Evelyn and the bus driver. The stage was set, the players were in place, and the city moved on, oblivious to the drama unfolding on bus route number 23. As the bus weaves through the bustling city, Evelyn, a dignified elder with a rich history in activism, takes her place at the front. Across from her, the driver, Robert, marked by his prejudices, signals the tension that's about to unfold among the passengers. We meet Evelyn Carter, a dignified elder with a history of civil rights activism. As she boards the bus, her eyes, seasoned by many battles for equality, survey her surroundings with calm resolve. Today is no different. She's ready to face whatever comes, even on a simple bus ride to a community event. Robert Whitman, the bus driver, offers a stark contrast. A longtime employee of the transit company, his experiences have skewed into biases that often taint his judgment. When Evelyn, with a polite nod, drops her fare into the box and makes her way toward the front seat, Whitman's demeanor shifts noticeably. His scowl deepens, setting the stage for a clash that neither he nor Evelyn can avoid. Their first interaction crackles with tension. As Evelyn reaches for a seat near the front, Whitman barks at her, insisting she move to the back. His voice, gruff and commanding, cuts through the murmurs of the morning crowd. Evelyn pauses, her stance resolute, facing Whitman with a quiet strength that doesn't need to shout to be heard. This is the spark, the moment when their worlds collide, setting off a series of events that will challenge them both and draw the entire bus into a circle of escalating. As the bus rumbled down the bustling city streets, tension thickened the air inside. Evelyn Carter, her posture unyielding, remained seated near the front. She met the increasingly agitated gaze of the bus driver, Robert Whitman, whose face was reddening by the minute. "Ma'am, you need to move to the back," Whitman demanded, his voice booming over the hum of the engine and the murmur of unsettled passengers. Evelyn looked around, her eyes calm but resolute, as she responded with a steady voice, "I will sit right here where I paid to sit. I'm not moving to the back." Her declaration, clear and firm, seemed to echo through the bus, drawing the attention of every passenger. The reactions were varied. Some passengers glanced nervously at their phones, others whispered to their neighbors, weighing the gravity of the situation. A young mother clutching her toddler looked on with wide-eyed concern, while an elderly man shook his head in disapproval of the driver's demands. Amid the rising clamor, a young college student pulled out his smartphone, the camera light flickering to life as he began to record the standoff. The atmosphere shifted palpably, with passengers beginning to realize that they were witnesses to a potentially explosive confrontation. Whitman, feeling the eyes of the passengers on him, doubled down. "If you don't move, I'll have to call the authorities," he threatened, his voice cracking slightly under the strain. This threat seemed to stiffen Evelyn's resolve even more. "Call them," she replied, her voice low but loud enough to carry across the now silent bus. "I've done nothing wrong." As Whitman hesitated, his hand hovering over the radio, A surprising ally emerged for Evelyn. A middle-aged man in a worn-out blue jacket, who had been silently observing from a few seats back, stood up. "I don't see why she should move," he declared, his voice gruff but steady. "She's paid her fare like everyone else. What year do you think this is?" This unexpected support sparked a murmur of agreement among some passengers, emboldening a few others to voice their discontent. "Yeah, leave her be. She's not causing any trouble," a teenage girl piped up, her voice tinged with defiance. Whitman, now visibly shaken by the growing opposition, pressed the radio button, calling in for backup. "This is Route 23. I need assistance." "A passenger is refusing to comply with seating instructions," he reported, his voice a mixture of frustration and embarrassment. As the bus pulled over with a hiss and a jolt, the standoff continued to unfold. The delay angered more passengers, caught up in the drama and now late for their own commitments. The young man recording the incident spoke up. "You're holding up everyone, sir. It's just a seat." With the arrival of transit security, the scene reached a crucial juncture. Two officers stepped onto the bus, their expressions unreadable as they assessed the situation. Evelyn remained seated, her chin lifted, ready to defend her dignity and rights. The officers approached, and one of them asked calmly, "What seems to be the problem here?" Before Whitman could respond, the man in the blue jacket interjected, "There's no problem here except one that's being made by the driver. This woman has every right to sit here." As the officers deliberated, whispers turned to open discussions about rights, respect, and decency among the passengers. The narrative had shifted, and what began as a simple bus ride had transformed into a vivid tableau of community, conflict, and the quest for justice, all captured by the unblinking eye of a smartphone camera. This was more than just a dispute over a bus seat. It was a reflection of a society still grappling with the shadows of its past, now unfolding live before an audience both on and off the bus. As the cityscape blurred past the fogged windows, the tension inside the bus reached a fever pitch. Robert Whitman, his patience frayed to its ends, slammed the brakes, jerking everyone forward. The bus screeched to a halt in the middle of a busy street, drawing curious glances from pedestrians outside. "That's it," he shouted, his voice laced with fury as he turned off the ignition and stood, facing Evelyn with a stern finger pointed directly at her. "You will move to the back, or you will leave this bus." Evelyn, who had remained composed until now, looked up at Whitman with a steely gaze, her voice resonant and unwavering. "I am not moving," she declared, "and you have no right to make me." Her defiance seemed to echo through the bus, silencing the murmurs and drawing the eyes of all passengers toward the unfolding drama. At this moment, the atmosphere shifted palpably. One by one, smartphones appeared in the hands of passengers, their cameras pointed towards the confrontation. The soft clicks and faint lights of recording devices punctuated the air, a silent testament to the gravity of the situation now being documented for the world to see. A young woman in the back, her hand trembling slightly with the weight of her phone, whispered to her neighbor, "This is wrong. He can't do this." Her words, though quiet, carried through the bus, inspiring others. More phones rose into the air, each a beacon of witness and solidarity with Evelyn. Whitman, his face reddening even more, glanced around, his eyes darting from one recording device to another. The reality of his actions being recorded seemed to dawn on him, adding a hint of hesitation to his voice. "This is for everyone's safety," he tried to justify, his tone less sure. "We need to maintain order on this bus." But the crowd was not swayed. From the middle of the bus, a man's voice called out, "She's doing nothing wrong. You're the one causing trouble here, not her." This bold statement rallied more support, and soon a chorus of agreement filled the bus, emboldening Evelyn further. "I've stood up for myself all my life," Evelyn said, her voice rising with a calm yet fierce intensity. "I'm not about to be bullied into submission, not today, not on this bus, and certainly not by you." Her words struck a chord and spontaneous applause broke out among the passengers, a wave of approval washing over her like a warm embrace. In a desperate attempt to regain control, Whitman reached for his radio to call for backup. However, before he could speak into it, an elderly man stood up, his voice booming over the commotion. "Look around, driver. Everyone is against you. Do the right thing. Let her be." As Whitman hesitated, the solidarity in the bus grew stronger. People nodded and murmured their support for Evelyn, their collective voice turning into a powerful force. Whitman, now visibly shaken by the public's reaction, slowly lowered the radio. As the bus doors hissed open, the arrival of transit security marked a pivotal turn in the ongoing drama. The officers stepped onto the bus, their expressions betraying a mix of professionalism and bewilderment at the scene before them. The bus, filled with the murmur of tense anticipation, watched as the officers quickly assessed the situation. Evelyn sat, her posture regal and defiant, while around her passengers voiced their support, creating a palpable solidarity that even the officers couldn't ignore. "What's happening here?" one officer asked, his voice calm yet authoritative. Evelyn, with the quiet confidence of someone who knew the moral high ground was hers, replied, "I am simply sitting in a seat for which I paid, refusing to be moved because of one man's prejudice." Her words, clear and resonant, hung in the air, and several passengers nodded in agreement, their myriad phones still recording every moment. As the officers turned to Whitman, the bus driver's confidence seemed to crumble under the weight of public scrutiny. "She's disrupting the order of the bus," Whitman attempted to explain, gesturing broadly towards Evelyn. But his voice faltered, overshadowed by the chorus of disagreement from the passengers. One officer, skeptical, surveyed the crowd. "Is she causing any harm? Or is it your actions that have stopped this bus and upset these people?" The question, pointed and laden with implication, made Whitman pause, his mouth opening but no sound emerging. Around him, the evidence of his misjudgment was overwhelming as whispers of disapproval rippled through the bus. In that moment, the downfall of Robert Whitman began to crystallize. The officers, unconvinced by his defense, turned their attention back to the community's new heroine. "Ma'am, we apologize for the inconvenience. You are free to stay seated right where you are," the other officer declared, effectively siding with Evelyn and the supportive public. This decision sparked a small cheer among the passengers, a sound that felt like the ringing of justice to Evelyn's ears. Meanwhile, Whitman's face turned a shade paler, the reality of his situation sinking in. The realization that his actions were not only wrong but now also viral, subject to the harsh judgment of public opinion, was a bitter pill to swallow. How will this affect the rest of Whitman's day, and possibly his career? What would you do if you witnessed such an injustice? The officers made their decision clear, and Evelyn remained seated, her demeanor unshaken despite the ordeal. The resolution of the conflict began to take shape in the most dignified manner possible. The officers spoke to Whitman in hushed tones on the side, their words firm and their intent unmistakable. Within moments, it was announced that Whitman would be facing disciplinary action for his conduct. The murmurs of approval from the passengers underscored the collective relief and sense of justice being served. Evelyn, once just another passenger, had now become a symbol of defiance and strength. Her resolve had not only challenged an injustice, but had sparked a wider conversation among the passengers and beyond. People began to share the video widely across social media platforms, captioning their posts with calls for change and highlighting the need for a reevaluation of policies within the transit authority. In the days following the incident, local news outlets picked up the story, and Evelyn was invited to speak at community forums and schools about her experience. Her message was clear and resonant: stand firm in the face of injustice, and be the catalyst for change you wish to see. Her story inspired others to come forward with their own experiences of discrimination, galvanizing the community to demand more substantial changes within the transit system and other public services. The impact of Evelyn's defiance went beyond just a victory against one misguided bus driver. It stirred the consciousness of the community, prompting discussions on civil rights and the importance of standing up against discrimination. The Transit Authority, faced with mounting public pressure and negative media coverage, initiated a series of workshops and seminars on racial sensitivity and customer service for all their employees. Evelyn's act of courage had turned her into a local hero, admired not just for her refusal to move but for her ability to speak truth to power in a way that ignited a spark within the community. As the narrative of that day on the bus continued to unfold, the broader implications of her victory became clear. It wasn't just about one bus ride, it was about challenging and changing the status quo, about ensuring that no one else would have to endure what she did. In what ways do you think individual acts of courage can lead to widespread change? Have you ever witnessed or participated in a moment that led to a larger discussion or transformation in your community? The dust settled quickly after the confrontation between Evelyn and Whitman, but the ripples of the incident spread far and wide. The video of Evelyn standing her ground became viral, shared thousands of times across social media platforms. People from all walks of life commented on her courage and the necessity of standing up against injustice. Local news channels picked up the story, catapulting Evelyn to the forefront of a renewed dialogue on racial discrimination and public accountability. In the days that followed, the bus company faced immense public scrutiny. Calls for systemic changes to their training programs and customer service policies grew louder. Evelyn, who had been a quiet force of change in her community for years, found herself at the center of a significant societal shift. She was invited to speak at various community events and educational forums, where she emphasized the importance of resilience and the power of a single voice to instigate widespread change. The bus company, responding to the tidal wave of public demand, initiated a comprehensive review of their policies. They announced a series of workshops on racial sensitivity and inclusivity, aimed at fostering a more understanding and respectful interaction between their employees and the public. These changes marked a promise for future improvements that could potentially transform everyday experiences for countless passengers. Evelyn's personal reflection on the event revealed a deep sense of fulfillment mixed with a hopeful outlook for the future. She saw her experience not just as a personal victory but as a beacon for others who might find themselves facing similar injustices. If my standing up makes it easier for even one person to feel safer and more respected, then it was all worth it, Evelyn shared during an interview, her words resonating with many who had seen her stand firm. As the story of that fateful bus ride continued to unfold, the moral became clear: individual courage can indeed lead to significant societal change. The community, once a silent witness to everyday injustices, was now more aware and vocal. The impact of Evelyn's defiance and the subsequent changes in the bus company's policies served as a testament to the power of standing up and speaking out. What do you think are the long-term effects of such public standoffs on company policies and social attitudes? Have you ever seen a courageous act that led to positive change in your community?